everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with a mid-March weekly garden tour. Now, we have been having really mild, wonderful weather here in central North Carolina, and well, everything has burst into bloom. Not only is it beautiful, but the fragrance is amazing. I so wish smell-o-vision existed. Check out this Arnold Promise Witch Hazel, which reminds me of my childhood because it smells like Lemon Pledge. So without further ado, let me turn this camera around and give you a burst of spring inspiration. Well, here is an up-close view, and this is one of my favorite branches to bring inside. It'll fill your entire house with its lemony fragrance. It's also a great opportunity to do some pruning if you have branches that are crossing. Now, at the base of that is another one of my favorites. This is Coralopsis. This is one called Golden Spring. And of course, now is its bloom time, but it's actually named that because it has chartreuse foliage all winter. This is in the same family as the witch hazel, but you can see this is a lower growing shrub, a bit more horizontal or wider in its habit. And I love it combined with the witch hazel because, well, the two really complement one another and they're always blooming simultaneously. This is another one that's great to bring in for flower arrangements. You know, you don't even have to have a large vase. Just do this with some small jugs of water and it'll really brighten up your space. Coralopsis, this is definitely a plant that more people should be growing. It's also called winter hazel, not to be confused with witch hazel. Well, the woodland edge is looking very springy. It definitely kind of reminds me of Easter. You see the camellias are still in full bloom. That's Happy Higo. Here we have one of my all-time favorites. This is Roma Resorta, a wonderful Italian variety from the mid-1800s. It's really kind of the plant that got me excited about heritage camellias. See, Irrational Exuberance is still putting on some amazing flowers. And there's still a few blooms left on Crimson Candles. But this was really, you know, outstanding show earlier in the season. Now I've got a lot of double hellebores that I haven't plucked. And the reason for that is these tend to not set seed or not set seed very abundantly. And to be honest, I wouldn't mind if I could get some seed off these because I love the double forms. I'm more concerned about getting all of the single flowers removed from the hellebores because those tend to be the most prolific. I don't want to quite call them invasive, but honestly, here in central North Carolina, I don't think that that word is totally out of reach. And actually, as I'm saying it, look at, I do have seedlings from the doubles. And I don't know which one this would be from. You know, I have one variety here, a different one here, but I do have seedlings. So I think I will go ahead and probably pot these up and transplant them because I really do like the doubles. It'll be a game to see if they come true. Well, you can see that the native trillium are just about ready to start blooming. And, you know, this has been planted 13 years. This is a big clump. I definitely should divide it per Dennis's instructions. I'll wait until a bit later in the season, certainly after it flowers. You can see the daffodils are in bloom and the Edgeworthias are still blooming quite well, with the Edgeworthia papifera really starting to show off. You can see those flowers, which are much smaller, are finally turning upright and fully open. You see the Edgeworthia chrysantha here is sort of in its last days with its color showing. Still incredible fragrance, and just plants that I think absolutely every gardener in the Southeast should include in their collection. Sophia is acting like a squirrel. I think she's excited because the arborists are on their way to do some cleanup work on the next door property, getting rid of a bunch of invasives. I mentioned hellebores, and you can see I've got a ton of hellebore flowers here that I need to go ahead and pluck because these are seeding incredibly. You see all of this are seeds that have germinated from last year, meaning I missed a bunch of flowers last year. And I recognize that hellebores aren't invasive everywhere, but they are here. And I keep saying this because I want you to be aware that I'm not saying you shouldn't grow them, but you do need to interrupt their seed cycle. Otherwise, you know, they can become a problem. And I certainly don't want them invading my woodland. So I will be digging all of these up. I don't think they're really worth saving. It's just a simple single white flower. It's not particularly special. I can tell you one thing. I don't need a million hellebore seedlings in this native woodland. Now, in contrast, what I do want are natives to populate the garden, cover the ground plane, and hopefully smother out some of the non-native weeds. And here we've got Paccaria aurea. Fabulous plant, loves this location. It likes wet and it likes shade. I planted it in a bunch of the wrong places last year. Now I know where it belongs. And you know, you can see that it's just starting to bloom. It's a great evergreen ground cover. And you can totally see there are some weeds in here, but for the most part, the Paccaria is taking over the ground plane and basically making it so there's no room for undesirable plants to get established. This is what I'm aiming for in this woodland as I transition from non-natives to a native plant palette. So I've been on the lookout for the trillium that Dennis and I planted, and I don't see any, but I do see the twin leaf, which I believe also came from Dennis. And if I'm not mistaken, is this Jeffersonia? I need to do some Googling before I act like I know what I'm talking about. However, I see it coming up here and there. I know I planted these separately because the roots didn't look the same as the trillium. Obviously, they aren't trillium. And well, this is a really exciting find. So I'm thrilled to see these are growing. I don't see, this is where we put all the trillium along this edge. I don't see any of those poking up yet, but of course, hope springs eternal. And you know, down here, Dennis put sticks everywhere that we put trillium. And he did mention that, you know, they might not break dormancy this year. Don't give up, they will come back next year. So I'll just keep you guys informed. I also filled this whole section and I do see some action. So that looks like a trillium poking up. And here and up there. Right here, look, this one's about to bloom. Oh, how exciting. I see more there. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling real good now. I was getting a little bit nervous over there, but I'm feeling good now. And oh, that's super random. That's a deer horn. Oh my gosh. You never know what you'll find in my garden, I guess. Well, I wanted to show you how big some of the California poppies have gotten. Now, I think this is one that's actually been growing for at least more than a year. And you see how enormous the plant has gotten. And, you know, everything is bulking up. You can see that the larkspur, this self-sown, is actually already starting to elongate its stem. And, you know, lots of nigella, all self-sown. Look at how big that California poppy is. Now, interesting to see here, it seems the deer nibbled a little, but then they stopped. And larkspur is poisonous to mammals, not deadly, but doesn't taste great. So glad to see they tried it, and then they've stopped eating it. Of course, all these self-sown poppies, these are all corn poppies. It's amazing how much everything has grown just in a few days. And look, this already has a flower bud. you know, I've never had poppies this advanced, this early, but here we are, bottle adjacent. I am positive that the relationship between the warm air and the glass is influencing this. And wanted to show you an update on the beautiful pink Japanese pussy willow. You could see, you know, here it is in its tight stage. And then, you know, as the stamens become present, you can see all the pollen. And so this is moving right along as far as growing out, and well, it's already starting to put leaves on. The season is just moving forward really, really fast. 22 years in North Carolina, and I'm always taken back by how quickly spring comes on and then how the season just kind of bowls me over. I never really feel caught up. I always feel like I'm missing something, in part because now I do travel a lot during the season. It's prime garden symposium time. But I'm trying to just enjoy every little moment that I have. And well, this is a moment that I'm really appreciating right now. All of that self-sown arugula in full bloom. And I'll obviously keep this. It'll set seed and I'll have a new crop that I don't even have to be involved in. This is totally self-sufficient. And one reason I love arugula so much is it starts bitter, it ends bitter. You can eat it at any stage and the animals leave it alone. You'll notice no deer browse on this big stand of arugula. Meanwhile, they're eating everything else. I wanted to do a quick update on my California redwood, mostly for Daniel and Sanford. I'm 100% convinced that I've got a disease. There's more dead branches showing up very suddenly. You can see a lot of chlorosis on all of the branches now. So unfortunately, I think its days are numbered. I'm not fighting it because it's in an absolutely ridiculous spot. You know, these trees get enormous and I planted it there. So yeah, I don't know what it is. I should send in a sample to the NC State lab and see if I can get some answers, just to give you all some info. But you can really see the chlorosis on those upper branches. And that definitely means there's a physiological problem. All right, can you spot the kitten? Mr. Reginald is in the arugula patch because he is precious. Hi. Well, I've done a pretty good job of letting the pathways be plant-free, except for right here. The good thing is this arugula will be done by the time the open garden comes around on May 11th. So this pathway will be open, or so I say. And you can see just in a few days' time how much everything has jumped. We've had mild weather and a lot of rain, and everything is growing really fast. It's just amazing how rapid everything grows as the day length is really significantly increasing and the soil temperatures are warming. Again, these cottage gardens, incredible how much the poppies have grown in just a week. And same thing here at the feed tank bed. You know, it's really amazing to see this combination. I love the textures and the colors. Mustard, California poppies, Allium schubertii, and of course my favorite plant, fava beans. And over into this bed, again, everything has just grown so much. You can see the lupins have really gotten a lot taller just in the last few days. And look at how full and lush this feed tank is. Look at these fava beans. They are so beautiful. It's definitely a plant that I think everyone should grow at least one time in their life. The flowers are so cool. I could not be happier than I am with this. And wow, it's going to be extraordinary when all of this comes into flower. Well, I'm happy to show you one mangave that did get planted in the ground that has absolutely survived the winter. Now, this was big, and I can't remember the cultivar. Maybe Man of Steel, I'm not sure. But I have one that did live. You see here was a smaller one in a pot, did not make it. I need to go ahead and remove it because it's really ugly. Okay, just like that, quite simple. So I wouldn't say mangave are hardy here, but I still think they're well worth growing. Well, because we haven't had frost, the Magnolia stellatas are perfect. They usually get frosted and then they turn brown and look really ugly. But this year, so far, they're looking great. And the Cercis chinensis Don Egoff has definitely started to color up really rapidly. Let me get into better light so you can really enjoy the incredible display that it's putting on. Again, what makes this really distinct from our native Cercis canadensis is its flowering habit along all of the stems all the way down to the base. Cercis canadensis tends to only bloom on last year's wood, so it's more tips. This is whole plant. I've also had better success growing Cercis chinensis because they haven't had the issues with ambrosia beetles. So I lost most of my Cercis canadensis collection about 8 years ago to an ambrosia beetle infestation. And you know, that's a problem that we face here in the Southeast. Usually by the time you realize it's happened, it's already too late. So this is another reason why I really like having Cercis canadensis in my collection. Now you can see I do grow a couple of heat-tolerant lilacs. They don't smell as good as the northern lilacs. This is just one of those things that as a northern transplant, you've got to get over. You're not going to grow lilacs like you did in Michigan. But I do have lilacs that are successful. I think this is Lilac Sunday. I really need to get these labeled again. You can see lots of little flower buds starting to form. I have another one here, which I'm gonna have to go back in last year's videos to actually identify these. But this one hasn't broken dormancy yet. It's not quite showing any leaves. My favorite one has really suffered, but I think in part because I had it planted too close to that cryptomeria we had taken down last year. And it seems to be coming back. This is Syringa Hyacinthiflora Excel. And I'm really pleased to see that it isn't dead because you can see the main trunk completely died. I did let this get really dry and it was definitely overrun. I think now that it has more light and I'm committed to giving it more water, it should do really well. This is the best scented lilac that I have grown successfully here in the Southeast, but it's relatively difficult to source. Your local garden center is not going to be carrying it, unfortunately. I used to grow all of these when I was the propagator at Camellia Forest, but unfortunately, I don't know of any sources currently that are offering these plants. One of the big topics that we're covering in Charleston at Magnolia Plantation at the symposium is kind of what I've learned as a northern transplant living in the South. And the biggest lesson is you can't bring all of those plants down here. They don't perform the same. Our climate is just very different. We don't have, in the summer, a very big temperature differential between night and day. We don't have the same number of chill hours. Our ground doesn't freeze. So plants like lilacs and peonies and hostas, they just kind of exhaust themselves and they really underperform. And, you know, it's a trade-off for living in a milder climate where you get to grow a lot of other amazing things like camellias. I mean, who doesn't want to have a camellia in their yard? I'll take a camellia over a hosta all day long. And so behind me, we've got my favorite red. This is Royal Velvet. And in front of it, a very ill-placed Cercis chinensis alba. So I showed you the pink or purple version right there. That's Don Egoff. This is the white version of the Chinese redbud. It's not quite open yet, but in a few days time, it'll really be putting on a show. And I do love the combo of the red and white together. However, I really should have planted this cercis in a better spot where it would have more room to grow. So don't do as I do and actually give your trees a little bit of space. They are not annuals. You don't need to plant them on 12-inch centers like I did. Well, you can see that royal velvet and of course October Affair just keeps on going. Such a magnificent plant. It's been blooming since the fall. And of course, got these great kind of bicolor formal double flowers. It's definitely a variety that I highly recommend. It's introduced by Camellia Forest, and it really is a terrific plant. Well, the cherries are doing their thing. And of course, everything looks good with Carolina Blue Sky. But here you can see Prunus incisa in full bloom, middle of March. You know, it's been teasing this show basically all winter long. I would say right now is its peak bloom. It's such a joy to see. In addition to the Prunus incisa blooming, the Prunus subhirtilla variety Autumnalis rosea is also flowering really well. It's a little past its peak because you can see the foliage is already starting to emerge, but it's a beautiful tree nevertheless. Been waiting for this to happen all winter long, and here we are. It's really doing its job. Well, everybody, the arborists are here. Exciting things are about to happen on the next door property. And I am gonna wrap up this weekly garden tour by giving you a view of the wave in the front cottage garden. I'll definitely be posting videos on my fertilizer plan, kind of more weed and seedling ID as everything is really starting to grow up. And well, I'm really excited for the fact that spring is really just around the corner. Equinox is just a few days away. And well, all the plants are really starting to jump. You can see that bachelor buttons are already starting to initiate stems and flower buds. So I wouldn't be surprised if I have some of this blooming for the next weekly garden tour. Well, I do hope that you will subscribe so that you can stay in the loop as I continue to share the progress on everything that's growing here in my central North Carolina gardens. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Happy gardening.